Okay, we're on the top of Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph. We're continuing with we're in the middle of this discussion. It really is not so negay anymore how we got into it, but the issue was that we had come to we had to be mechalik between the Mishnah and the Brisa, and mechalik between. We said that an example that essentially payalim who know what they're getting in for cannot have any tinus if the job that they were hired for ceases to exist. So let's say they were hired, for example, to cut wheat, and then all the wheat gets blown away by a tornado. It's not if it happens stamazay from nowhere, the person who hired them is not responsible. But if the person who hired them had reason to know about it, while the workers had no way of knowing about it, then it's the responsibility of the balabas, of the person who hired them, to make up. So we're going to have different examples of variations. So on the third line on Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, Baomer, Hayman de Oiger Aguri Ladavo, someone who hired workers to work on irrigation ditches, but also mitra, and it rained, which is, you think that's the reason why you need an irrigation ditch, but obviously while the rain is coming down, it's not possible to dig the ditch, it's covered over. They need to dig it deeper. So the word pseida the pilot. That's the problem of the pilot. Meaning, pilim should realize when you're hired to dig irrigation ditches, there's a possibility of rain. Rain is always a possibility, and therefore they should have foreseen that. Also nahara, but if a river came, pseida the balabais, because v'yav la kapayel batal. He has to pay them kapayel batal because that's something the Adon has knowledge of the intricacies and the details of his particular land, and he could know that it's occasionally flooded by a river. But the workers have no way of knowing it. Since he didn't inform them in advance, it's therefore his responsibility. Someone who hired workers again for irrigation ditch, and it got shut off. Their work got stopped by a river in the middle of the day. Say to the pilot, if it's something that's not foreseeable. So we're saying this past case that we said that Asanara say to the balabais, it's going to depend on the circumstances. So saying if it happens in the middle, if it's something that's not usual to happen, then it's say the pelim, even though it's pasuk, even though it's from the nar, but it's possible that sometimes the nar comes without it would never happen before, and this is the first time, so there was no way that the balabais could have known about it.
Now, the first case of Rava wasn't the reason why the pseida was on the pelim is because it's to be expected, but if it's not expected, then it's the loss of the balabais, right?
If it's not, if it's expected, well, it depends on whether there's two things. You need that it's expected, and that the pilim have knowledge of it, that it's the loss of the pilim. So so a nar, we're saying it's something that even though the balabais knows about it, the pilim have no way of knowing about it.
All right, which would imply that the rule is if it's something that common to happen, like rain, right? Then it's the loss of the pilim. But if it's not common, then it's the loss of the balabais. But here we're saying with the river, right? When even if it's not common, then the pseida is on the pilim, which I would have thought the opposite.
Right.
Am I missing something?
It's only the pseida of the balabais if he had more knowledge than them. We're saying over here specifically that it's a case where he had no more reason to have knowledge of it. So that it's like a tornado come. Like the first thing that we said, right?
The balabais knew that it's going to happen?
For also mitra pseida the pilim, because that's also nara pseida the balabais, because the balabais had knowledge of it.
Who said, where did we see that he had knowledge of it?
Let me look at the previous case. Maybe the previous case.
That's what I'm saying, that I'm looking at the, I was
Yes,
just confused, we got this thing of the knowledge of
because
the Baal
we're
Bayis.
saying, because we say in this case,
Yeah,
Ovid the pasuk say to the Payalim, if it's not usual for it to happen. We didn't make that disclaimer in the first case. We didn't say Ilay Ovid the
well,
pasuk.
but when we spoke about it, we said the difference is when it's rain, that's common, right? And that's why it's the loss of the Payalim. The
Because
Nahara,
they would know about it. That's operating on the second factor, right? There's two factors.
where do
Who
you see
knows
that
about
there's
it?
two factors?
I'm saying
Where do we get
I'm
that
telling you
from?
there's two things that you need in order for the Balabayas to be chai. It has to be something that he knows about, and it has to be something that's no. Basically, it's what it is. Depends if the payalim for the
Yeah,
Balabayas to be chayiv, he has to know about it. I guess it's the same thing, really. He has to know that it's something likely to happen. So if
uh-huh,
it's something that's unlikely to happen, then he obviously doesn't know that it's likely to happen. But the question is, who knows about it being likely to happen? If
got
it's
it,
something that's likely to happen that only the Balabayas knows about it, then he's responsible.
all
But if it's
right,
something that neither of them know that it's likely to happen, then it's an oinus, and the Balabayas is part.
all right,
Okay. So, Haiman the Agar Gula Dalu, Pasuk Nor Palgudium. Ile of the Pasuk, if it's not normal to be, so it's a total oinus, say to the Pilim. It's the bad luck of the Pilim. Of the Pasuk, if it's something that doesn't really happen, Ibn Masa, again, even if it's something that it does ordinarily happen, so the Balabais knows about it. But if the Pilim are also inhabitants of the city, say to the Pilim, then it's again because they have just as much knowledge as he does. It's the same because, like we said in the previous Gemara, if they had come the night before and sussed out the situation and should have been aware that it was a possibility, then they're responsible. Lavne masa said the balabais, but for napne masa, so there's an imbalance in the knowledge. So then it's the balabais is achra. Amaro, haiman the agur agura la'avidita, someone who hired people to do work, whatever kind of work. V'shalom avidita b'palga diyuma, and they finished their work early. The Gra takes out the next two words. Inami the kavasa, if the employer has other work to provide them with, that's of the same difficulty or the same harshness, or that's equivalent. I'm sorry, it's equivalent or lesser. It's not as hard a work. Mifkid lahu, then he can give them that other work. The kashamina, but if he only has work, like he hired them, let's say to be an usher, to be a doorman, and then in the middle he says, "Oh, you know what? I need you to clean out a cesspool." So they say, "Listen, that's not what we were hired from." They finished the doorman job. He hired them for the day, and They finished the doorman job, and he says, "Listen, I paid you for the whole day. I want you to do the cesspool." They could say, "That's not what we hired you for." He has to pay them the whole day's work. Why do we say that they get paid the full amount? Let them be paid the difference between what they would be willing not to have to work. We're talking about like these let's say these decathlon champions. They need the exercise. If they're not going to continue doing their work, they're going to get weakened. So they're not looking forward. For them, it's better to be working. So there's no difference really between to get paid mishalem or to be paid the amount they would want to be bought. Omar ma. Shaman lahen esmasha as. We said we're going back. Now we're going back all the way to the beginning of the brisa. So we brought this whole brisa for one particular thing all the way at the beginning, and then we went on this whole tangent of how does this work with the kapoil bottle. And now we're going back to the brisa, right? The brisa had started the Tanya. So that was the raya that he told me. Then we continued. We evaluate. We said in the case we're saying now the Tanakama of the brisa shita. The Tanakama shita was that the what do you call it? The workers is Yadei al Halyona. They have the right to quit whenever they want. So we said we evaluated what they did. So the Gemara is just summing up the shita of the Tanakam. Again, there was a machlokes in the brisa, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details. There were a couple of extra lines in the brisa, but the essential din of the brisa was that if someone hired Payalin, or actually someone hired a Kablan, it's not really negay now, even though the Gemara Rashi discussed it earlier. But the case of the brisa was talking about a Kablan, right, where they hire them to do specific work, and then the employer changed his mind. The Tanakhama says if he changed his mind and he dismissed them, or the workers changed their mind and they decided not to continue working, the Tanakhama says even so they'll get whatever it was they were promised. And the classic case in the Mishnah is they were promised to get 2 sloim, which is 8 dinrin, and it then went up in the cost of the laborers or the kablonim went up from 8 dinrim to 12 dinrim. So now, if they quit in the middle of the day, if he's going to give them the 4 that he's supposed to give them, he's going to have to hire someone for the second half of the day. He's going to have to pay them 6. He's going to end up paying a total of 10 for the day, and he had a contract with them to pay for 10, to pay for 8. So what Reb Daisa says, since they backed out, they have to reduce it, and that's what our Mishnah at the beginning of the parak said, is that whoever changed their mind is Yadai ala Tachtaina. So the workers would have to defer 2 of their the workers have to defer 2 of their dinrim that they were supposed to get and give it back to the employer so he could hire someone for 6 dinrim to finish the second half. That is Reb Daisa, who is the second Tana brought in the brisa. But the Tanakama had said that the general rule is it's like we have here in New York. Everyone is an at-will employee, and either party, or at least the Payalim, can at any time say, "I'm out of here." We know that we'll bring the pasuk later on. Avodahem v'lo yavodei lavodim. It's I believe it's in Parashas Bahar. I think we learned it today. Avodahem, I think Rashi talks about it, and therefore he can't hold them back. And if they decide to leave in the middle of the day, they get paid what they were promised, and there's no yadei al tachtaina. So that's what this Gemara is just quoting. It's saying over the shita of the Tanakam. Yad payil al halyoina doesn't mean it's al halyoina, but it means they don't have to lose anything if they back it. So then the Mishnah continued, the Brisa continued. So if these people backed out, the Tanakama said the Kablan backed out, he gets paid his full half, his prorated half. They have a choice. They could either take the half, and then the owner could fill it in himself, or if they want, a yigmur malachta v'yitlu shnei slaim, or they could decide to continue and finish the whole thing for the amount that they had originally agreed on. Like pshita. What do they have to tell you that for? They had they'd made up to pay 8 dinrin, which is shnei slaim, and that's what they're doing. We're talking about a case where, like we just said, it was originally supposed to be shnei slaim, and that was the going rate. And in the middle of the day, it switched and it became 12 dinrin or 3 slide. The Imru Pilam and the Pilam quit. Probably thought, I'll go get a better job for the second half day and make more money. But as a Balabais, the Balabais went and convinced them to come back to work. Motzei, I might say they could tell him, they could say the only reason why we agreed to come back, we thought it was self-understood that at least for the second half of the day, you're going to pay us the amount of the going rate, not the original amount that we paid. We already quit, and you said come back. So we thought you meant at the going rate, which would be instead of 4 slime for 4 dinner for half a day, it's 6 dinner. Said, no, listen, I know I convinced you to come back, but I didn't mean for extra money. I meant I'll give you better perks. I'll give you an extra donut, but I never promised any extra money. So we concluded that if the value of what they had done was if the value of what was left, meaning half of it was a seller, so that means the work that they had done was worth a seller, and that's what they get. Because, like we said, yada yada hal yain. So what does it have to repeat this again? That's what we already said. We already said that if you have to pay someone else, he can't go back to these guys and deduct from the original workers. So obviously he has to pay them the full amount. We're talking about where actually work at the beginning, it was cheaper to hire them. That means they really were going to get, the people were getting 3 dinrin to work a half a day, or 6 dinrin for a whole day. And this person agreed to pay them an extra dinner. I'm going to pay you 4 dinrin instead of everyone else, unlike everyone else is getting 3. But now, when it came time to when they came to the middle of the day, and that's when they decided they're going to quit, it actually, the value of their work went up, and now it's the classic 4 dinrin for half a day. And now they're so now it's more than now it's 4 zuzim instead of 3 zuzim. Maldetema, I might say, Amrile, 2 zuzah amlan, 2 zuzah havlan. You had originally agreed to pay us a zuz more than the going rate. So now we worked that half a day, but the going rate has gone up. So we want to get paid the extra zuz that you promised us over the going rate, which now would be 5 zuzim. Kamash malon, the amalhu ki amalchu 2 zuzim le have a kimlachu. He says to them, listen, the only reason why I agreed to do it is because I understood that you were not willing to take less than 4 zuzim to work. And because that was what you had your eyes set upon. Hashta kimlachu. But now you got the 4 zuzim that you needed in order to make it worthwhile for you to get up and come to work. But to give you an extra zuz, because I had agreed to give you an extra zuz, I wasn't mishabing myself for that. So that's the chiddush of selling. So that's the end of the Tanakama. Now we're going to Reb Daisa. Well, again, we said Reb Daisa disagrees. He says the person who was chayzer, it's yad elach tachlein. Reb Daisa amashamin lahen es masha asul liyasos hayafa shisadir nois lem shek. So now, if when the workers left in the middle of the day, now he had left half of the job to be done, and he had promised them 8 dinner for the whole day, which is 4 dinner for each half a day. But the second half of the day now, it's gone up in price, and now it's going to cost him 6 dinner to hire someone. So he says you give a shekel, you only have to pay them 2, because they have to make up the difference. So, the Gemara sums that up. Because he holds that the yad payil, since he was chayzer, it's ala tachtoin. So the Gemara says they have a choice. They could either finish the malacha or they get shnei slayim. That's really what we just said before. Why do we have to say that? Pshita, loitzricha. The zolavidite. We're talking about the opposite of the previous case, where the cost of workers went down in the middle of the day. So originally he had promised them 4, and now 4 dinar for half a day, or 8 dinar for the whole day, and now it's 6 dinar for a whole day's work. The Baomer balabayis, and the balabayis said, you know what, you can leave in the middle of the day, and I'm going to get cheap payalim to replace you. Instead of paying 8 for the whole day, I'll pay you for your half a day, and I'll get new payalim for cheaper. Upaisu, and they convinced him not to do so. Maudatema, I might say Motzei Amalhu, Adaita de Batrisali mi Agre. He might tell, maybe he could tell them, listen, hold on. What's the case? The Zol Avidate. But also they went and convinced him that they should stay on the job. Maybe he could tell them, you had given me agrai. You had agreed to I only told you could come back because I wanted you to give me a lower wage. That was the only reason why I agreed to it. Meaning, this is really problematic because if the balabayis is chayzer, where would it come from such a thing that the balabayis should be able to get off and only pay them the half that they were entitled to? L'chayra, if he's chayzer, it should be yadei al tachtono, like we said in our Mishnah. Regardless of who it was that was chayzer, it's yadei al tachtono. Whoever was the chayzer is yadei al tachtono. But over here it's mashma that he was going to give them that the etzem he was going to give them the full amount.
According to Reb Daisa, yad al tachtono, always.
But Reb Daisa was really reflecting our Mishnah, which is the chayzer is al tachtono.
I mean, Reb Daisa would agree that if in the original Reb Daisa says Shaman lahanim es masha azliyos, it's only because the workers backed out. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. What Shaman lamasha azliyos? Because in that case the workers backed out and they caused the loss to the balabayis. So therefore the balabayis says Shaman lamasha azliyos, and they take less. They only get 2 because they give the balabayis what he needs to finish the job.
Wow.
So the Gemara, the Rishonim ask on this. I'm like, maybe I'm making it too complicated, but this Gemara seems to be mashma that in this case where the balabayis was chayzer, one would say that normally it would be that it's that he gets, even though he was chayzer, he still gets his full amount. They can't tell him, you have to make us whole on what we're missing out on.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, we say, and they explain the reason is because we would have thought at this point the reason would be specifically because of the balabayis. Because I would have thought that the balabayis is the muchzak, and the payalim are coming to take away from him, so therefore they wouldn't have the ability to take away from him.
I mean, regardless of who backed out, at the end of the day, you're still trying to get...
It's always the balabayis. We would have thought the explanation of Rav Daisa is the balabayis is yadel aliyah. So that's why the Brisa tells you that it's not true, that's not the svara. It really depends on whoever was chayzer is yadei al tachtono. And you're going to say over here, you're going to say this cheshbon of that va'azol pa'ilim va'paisiu, that they could say adaita batzrisuli, that the reason that when the pa'ilim he could say, in this case, I want to get a benefit because I only agreed to come back at a lower rate, and that they could say, no, that wasn't what we agreed to. I would have said that we were intended to do extra work, which is really the reverse of the Gemara had earlier said in the Tanakama that where the Balabayas said that I'm just going to give you extra benefits, but not that I was renegotiating how much we're supposed to get. So the Brisa continued. Sell and lohem sell. If the Balabayas, the Balabayas had said that I'm going to give you a seller, and then the Balabayas had said I'm giving you 2 sloim for the day, and then he backed out, he gives them a seller. If the value of the work left to be completed is a seller, he has to pay them a seller for their half of the day. That's clear. This is a case where it's the same. It's not where anything changed. Saying the work that still remains complete is a seller, no one is chaylik on that. The question is only where it changed. We're talking about where the workers had agreed to take a reduced wage from the beginning. Meaning, originally everyone, let's say, was getting 5 dinrim for half a day, and they took 4 dinrim for half a day. It was taking 10, and they took 8 for the day. And then in the middle of the day, it went down to 4. Maybe he could tell them, okay, listen, now that half a day is 4, and we had agreed that you get a zuz less than the going rate, so the going rate now is 4 for half a day, so I only have to pay you 4 for the first half of the day, not the 5 that we had agreed on. Hold on a second, I'm sorry. Hello? Baruch Hashem. Can I just pause this for 1 second? Just a second. No, I'm talking to them. Okay. So now again, Pshita Amar Ravuna Breder V'Nas Leitzricha. I was selling nice on myself. Pshita Amar Ravuna Breder V'Nas Leitzricha the Azuli Inu Gabe Zuza Mei Kara, that they had given him a reduced price over the going rate. And in the end, the price that everyone was paying went down. Maybe he could tell them, you gave me a break on the price. I want that break on the current price, on the current going market price. We only agreed to that reduced price in the originally because we said, listen, you're not going to pay us such an exorbitant amount to pay 5 zuzim for half a day. But 4 you could handle. But this is a price that you can obviously pay, so we're not giving you a discount anymore. Amar Rav, halacha ke Reb Daisa. Rav says that halacha is like Reb Daisa. Again, Reb Daisa said in the Mishnah that the person yad aval chayzer is ala tachtainu. Whoever was chayzer, they have to make up the loss of the other person. And the Tanakama said no. The pile or the kabbalan in the case of the brisa has he can always back out and say I'm out, I'm finished with this job, and there's no consequences to him, because we say avada him v'lo yavada labad. Dr. Tomorrow, mi Amar Rav Hachi, does Rav really paskin like Reb Daisa? Amar Rav, pile yachal achsa b'yafilu b'chatzi ayon. That a pile could be chayzer even in the middle of the day without any consequences. So you see, that's not like Reb Daisa. Reb Daisa says there are consequences. That's exactly what he's chalik on the Rabbanan now. B'chi tema shani le Reb Daisa bein schiris l'kablanis. Well, we just quoted this brayse of Amar Rav. Not Reb Daisa. Rav had said the halacha that a pile could be chayzer. That's talking about a pile, which is a worker, someone who's a daily laborer. He's paid for his labor for the day. But maybe Reb Doisa is masking by a kabbalan. A kabbalan is not he's a skilled worker. He agrees to do a job for the day. He's less like an evet, someone who gives away his whole labor for the day is more likely to be included in avodahem v'lo yavod el avodah. But maybe a kabbalan Reb Doisa is masking that.
So in the case of when we say po yochalach subai, that's talking about a kabbalan.
Yeah.
I'm asking.
No, the other way around. The pile is not a kabbalan. Pile is a pile, a worker. A pile, the Torah guarantees that a person can't be an evet. So a pile is more like an evet. So therefore, the Torah says if he wants to opt out of the work, he can opt out. And so, but that which we said, but we were quoting that Rav said the halacha is like Reb Doisa. Reb Doisa is in our brisa. So our brisa was talking about, guys who had agreed. I forgot exactly what it was, but they had agreed on specific to cut a certain amount of wheat in the day, or whatever, or to I think to weave something. Those are kabbalonim. Those are people taking on a specific job. On that, Rav passes like Reb Doisa that the person who's chayzer is yadel al tachtaina. He doesn't have that guarantee of he could opt out whenever he wants. It makes sense if you think about it, right? This is like a very socialist, union-friendly type of thing that we say that a pile, someone who's close to being an eved, he has the guarantee from the Torah, from the pasuk, that he could leave without any consequences. But someone who's a more sophisticated type of worker, he entered into a contract to do something. If he leaves the middle causing damage, he has to make up for the damage. So maybe you could say that's a difference. Second one, Mishanile, is it possible to say that he's Machalik Vatanya? Someone who hired a pile, was a laborer, right? Not a cobbler. And in the middle of the day, he heard that, well, it doesn't say what it is. And in the middle of the day, he heard that someone died, or he got sick. So he say, Im Sacher who nois and nois chare. If he's a Seicher, if he was hired for the day, he gets his payment for the day. Bim Kabbalahu, and if he's a contractor, nois le Kabbalahu, so he made up whatever he was supposed to get. Meaning he gets the pro rata proportion of what he agreed to do. Now, these are both cases of Einstein. So it's different than what we've been talking about. We're not talking about someone was chayzer from his own volition. We're talking about someone who became an Einstein and he had to leave. Money. Who is this going like? If it's like the Rabbanu Chaylik on Reb Doisa, and they say that a pile can always leave, my ear Yeshama Shemeis Lei Mesa, Shechzasoi Kama, Donis. Why does it have to be it's an Einstein? Kili Einstein Nami Ha'am Rabbanu Yad Pile Al Yoin. We always said that the pile could leave and he gets his full pay. Ella la Reb Doisa he Ella Mahi it's Reb Doisa. Ushmamina Leishani Reb Doisa Ben Skiris Legablanis. Reb Doisa is saying the only reason why he got out of it is because it was an honest. But had it been a regular case of Chazara, they wouldn't have gotten their full pro rata portion. So vice that Reb Doisa holds that both in Schiris as well as Kabbalanus as well. If a Kabbalan leaves the middle of the day, he's entitled because of the pasuk to get his full proportionate share of his compensation. Zok the Gemara, no, lav dafka. It's not nishken raya that the machlekes is both in a kabbalan and even by a kabbalan. That Reb Doisa even says his din that Allah is like Reb Doisa even by a kabbalan, or he said his din by a kabbalan. Or not by Yitzchak b'davar avid v'divrei hakol. I could explain that brisa where we talked about where he died. It's talking about where it's a davar avid. So davar avid, if even Reb Doisa agrees, like we saw in the beginning of the brisa, that a davar avid, everyone agrees that you have to make good if you're causing a loss to the person that you're working for. It's not just that he has to hire someone at a higher rate, but it's a time sensitive matter. Then you certainly have to compensate it for that. Zak tomorrow. So let me see how much longer we can go. Let's go a little bit more. Tnan. Tnan. Kol mishana yadel achtachtayna. V'chol achoyze ba yadel achtachtayna. We learned in the Mishnah. There's a Mishnah later on. I mean, we had earlier. I'm sorry, this is the end of the previous Mishnah, the Mishnah that we had just seen. We ended off with Kol Mishana Yadal. Whoever changes from what was originally is Yadal. So Bishlam Kol Mishana Yadal. This is from Tanakh Rabbi Yehuda. The first part, this is the siyum of our last Mishnah, and that first part of the siyum of Kol Mishana, whoever changes, that's saying a Stam Tanakh Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to see later on. It's machlekes of Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. If someone changes, he changes what he was ordered to do. He doesn't do it according to the terms of the command. He dyed something bread that was supposed to be black, or vice versa. That it's yad el atachtain. Like Rabbi Yehuda and like Rabbi Meir says, it doesn't make a difference. What does it say? What is that coming to tell you? Again, we're being nimshach. That came right after we said Reb Doisa. That Reb Doisa said that the omen who is chayzer, the worker who is chayzer, it's yad al tachtain, and he only gets two. So what is it coming to tell you? Lav la'asuya pile, Reb Doisa. Is it not coming to tell you a pile? That tell you that Reb Doisa would say even a pile is yad al tachtain, not just a kablan. It's not l'chayr. It's coming to be mechalek and say that a pile is yad el tachayna, and the Reb Doisa holds it on both, not just a kabel, but also on a pile. El Reb Doisa tarti comes. So Gemara says einachem. That's a good raya. Reb Doisa really did say his din both on a pile and on a kabel, and both of them we're going to say the yad el tachayna. That there's no din of that the person can quit whenever he wants. Rav is chaylik on one, and he disagrees on one. Even though Rav said halacha is like Reb Doisa, he only was saying that the gabi a pile, the gabi a kablan, he didn't agree with Reb Doisa. Iba yisema kol achoyze ba yadel tachtayna. Look at the Tanya. Let me see. Can we do this? Yeah, and let's try to get to the two dots because we're so far behind. Can't afford. I know it's very late, but. Or else you could say this brisa that says this Mishnah. I'm sorry, the end of our Mishnah says Look at the time. Let's talk about a totally different thing. What is the case of someone who agreed to buy a sada for 1,000 zuz, and he gave him 200 zuz as a down payment. If the meicher decides, you know what, I don't really want to sell this property that I took 200 zuz for. Yad lekech al yain. The yad of lekech is al yain. Ratza oimelei tainli ma'isa yainli karka connecting ma'isa. He could say to the meicher, listen, I gave you 200 zuz. Either give me my money back or give me karka. Connected my mois, and then the balabayis has to pay him from his idis. Like we're going to see in the Gemara later on, the assumption is that means that the balabayis has to give from the idis, not even from the karka that they agreed to buy, from any idis that the balabayis has. Or with manchel lekech, if the lekech would have given the 200 is chayzer, yad moicha al yan, his yad is al yan. Rotza emelei helach moisav. He could say, here's the mois that you gave me. You're getting nothing. You want to be chayzer. So good, so you're chayzer, he'll take you $200. Or he could tell him, listen, you gave 200 zuz, that was already an effective kinyan, and I'm giving for you that ziburis in exchange for that money. That kanas chachamim, a penalty that they impose on him that he has to take ziburis. Okay, we'll stop over here. I'm sorry, no. Let's continue. Shimon Gamliel says this was all brought upon because they didn't know the proper procedure when you buy a karka. You should really teach them the proper way to do a kinyan to make it that someone can't be chayzer. Ketzad, chayzer v'lani pliny ben pliny macharti sada plinus l'pliny. Reuven says, I sold this sada to Shimon for 1,000 zuz, and Shimon gave me 200 zuz. He's saying, and I'm now owed by him 200 zuz, that the kinyan is complete, and the other 200 zuz is a new debt. So according to this is not a partial kinyan of 200 zuz, but rather this is a full kinyan on the full 1,000 zuz, and now he's owed 200 zuz that was used for the kinyan. So if you do it like this, then the whole thing is kani, and the purchaser still owes him the rest of it, no matter how long it is. So by converting it into a full sale and the debt, rather than a partial sale, with where he has to fill the rest of the kinyan, he's able to make it a kinyan that he can't be chayzer. The whole thing that was kesef, the kesef made the entire kinyan. Shkayach, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Have a good night.